Here we go. They say the hardest part of any journey is the first step. I just pushed the record button. This has been a long time coming. I don't know what it's going to be. I know how I got here. I'm going to share that. My name is Cash. Mom and Dad gave me that. That's my middle name. I've been running with that my whole life. I gave thumbs up, Mom and Dad. Good job. I like it. And you'll find out I'm a character of some kind. I don't know what yet. We're going to find out. Martin Luther King said he had a dream. He had a dream that one day people would be known for the content of their character. Well, I like that thought. The content of our character. And there have been some guys who and people, just people in general, men, women, who've come into my life. And over the past 60 years, they left a little piece of their character in my life. And that brought me to where I am today. What are we going to do here? Well, I have decided that to get the ball rolling on what I feel God is calling me to, that we're going to take this year. I am. You can join me. You're welcome. I hope you join me. I'm going to read through the New Testament of the Bible. And I'm going to do one chapter a day, 5 days a week. That will take 260 days because there's 260 chapters in the New Testament. We're going to start with Matthew chapter 1 today. But I have notes, and I just don't think the notes are going to help very much. I should start with where this idea came from. Is I've been through a few trials in life, kind of about that midpoint of life in your 40s. Kind of found myself starting over with a whole bunch of things in life. And some things went kind of rough during that time. And at some point, I felt God was calling me to make some changes, to change direction. And during that time, I just felt like He was telling me, "You're doing the wrong thing. You're doing the wrong thing." Well, I started asking God, "Well, what would you like me to do?" And I felt like He said, "I want you to teach." I'm like, are you sure about that? You want me to teach that? Like, I don't like that plan. I started arguing with God, having a little discussion with God. You want me to teach? And I started asking God a question. I said, "God, teach what to who? Teach what to who?" I started asking God that question. So if you're going to talk to me, I should ask some questions and get some clarity, right? And in this process, I started writing some notes on my smartphone. I put a little notes app on my phone. Let's show you what that looks like. So I put this little, it's going to be hard to see. I put a little notes app on my phone. And over the next 10 years, I've got 13,000 notes in here. And at first, some of these notes made no sense. And one of the things that really got it going was at one point in my life in my 30s, I had a paid for house. I had a small business in a small town. And things changed fast for me. And I wasn't ready for it. And found myself in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. one day, broke in a snowstorm, shoveling snow, and I was really grumbling. I was grumbling with God. It's like, everything was going great. What happened? Why am I out here? And it's kind of weird. This voice came in my head. It said, this is how I'm keeping you alive. Like, I got to shovel snow to stay alive? Like, I don't like this plan. And I started writing these notes that I just showed you, the 13,000 notes. And in that process, I felt God's called me. I want you to teach. I'm asking him, teach what to who. And every day I just tried to move closer to what that looked like. I had no idea where it was taking me or what it would be like. So each day I would make more notes. Well, what's God showing me? So as I read the Bible, he would show me something. And I'd ask him, what's that mean? Like, what are you showing me this for? What is that? And in the notes, as I was writing notes, I didn't realize what I was doing is journaling. Journaling sounded so, I don't know, girly or something. Journaling. Like, who needs to journal? But I like to keep lists and notes. And these patterns started to emerge. And then after a while, I could see he's really trying to guide me in a specific direction. And I kept asking him, teach what to who, teach what to who. And the message started to become clear. And I just started talking to anyone who would listen to me. So I've talked to lots of people in the last 10 years about some of these ideas. And I realized in the past 10 years, I might have written several books on this thing by accident. Like, I wasn't trying to do that, but that's where I'm at. And one of the messages that became clear to me over time is that in our head there are 4 voices. There's the voice of self. If you know anything about following that voice and the blind alleys it can lead you down, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of guys who've had really rough periods in their life who followed the voice of self, and it took them to some dark places. There's the voice of society. Right now, if you want to follow that voice, I think they're running off a cliff, so be careful. There's the voice of Satan up in your head. Probably not a good voice to follow. There is also the voice of the Spirit of God. All these 4 voices are up in here. They're inside of your head. And because they're in your head, they probably sound the same. So how do you sort out which voice is speaking to you and which one's the safe one to follow? You want to be following the voice of the Spirit of God. How do you know that you're doing that? Because the other 3 will lie to you. And you need to discern, how do I tell the truth from a lie? You need to become discerning. Well, God has a monopoly on truth. And he wrote it all down for us. Oh, I moved my Bible. He wrote it all down for us. He has a monopoly on truth. If you're trying to find truth, you're going to run into God. So since he wrote it down, if we start reading the Bible, it's like digging a gold mine. You start digging. You start digging. You're moving a lot of rocks and a lot of dirt. You think this is work. This is dumb. I mean, it's a 6,000-year-old book, and who knows who wrote it? And then you find a gold nugget. You start reading the Bible for the first time. A lot of them won't make sense because there's some weird stories in there. There's some weird people in the Bible. But God is going to speak to you. He's going to show you something. And if you start asking him, God, What are you showing me? Guess what? He shows up. And that's the beginning of a dialogue. It starts in his word, the Bible. You have to start there. Because if it doesn't agree with what God wrote down for us, it's probably a dangerous path. And it's probably not going to be the truth. And the consequences could be fatal and forever. Think about that. So here's what I want to do is my goal every year. I've been reading the Bible, trying to read it through every single year for the past 40 years. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper every time through. And if you talk to someone who's been reading it that long, it's inexhaustible. It's inexhaustible. And when God starts to speak to you through his word, it is so powerful. Uh, One man entered my life when I was about 20 years old. It's here's two words you'll never hear together again in the same sentence, probably. I met a charismatic Methodist preacher when I was about 20 years old. And he was at the heart of something that people call revival. I lived in Newton, Iowa. I was a senior in high school. And my brothers met this guy, Stan, before I did. And I was a DJ in high school. I would bring my light show and sound system and play all the music that kids wanted to hear. And was having a lot of fun. And my brothers asked me one day, they said, Cash, could you DJ a dance for us? I'm like, sure. Yeah, we're going to have it at the church basement, and you won't know any of the music. I thought, well, that's not possible. I know all the good music. They're like, no, you won't know any of it. So we get it all set up, and they start handing me albums. This is back when we had vinyl record players. They'd say, play track 5. I'd spin it up, play track 5. I'd never heard any of the music. I was playing Christian music by Christian artists, people I'd never heard of. Honestly, some of the music seemed kind of lame. But now, if I hear some of those songs, I'll break down in tears because they were powerful. And that one man, the reason I brought up that one man is I want to say one real quick thing. My definition of a real man. Okay, any boy can go make a baby. A man can put food on the table. But do you know what a real man is by my definition? A real man can help one who can talk about Jesus and help you meet Jesus. That is a real man. That charismatic Methodist preacher, I walked into his office one day and he said the most threatening thing to me that any adult man had ever said to me in my life. He looked at me right in the eye and he said, we need to pray. Oh my gosh. I about wet my pants. We need to pray? People do that? Oh, okay. In the next few minutes, he introduced me to Jesus. And people had been talking to me about Jesus, and I thought, I don't need any of that. That's for weaklings. I don't need that. But Stan told me that Jesus is knocking on the door of my heart, and there is no doorknob on this door. I have to open the door and let him come in. Jesus is a gentleman. You have to let him in. My life changed in a moment right there. So this has already gone almost 15 minutes. I didn't expect this. I think I'm going to stop this and use this as an introduction. But here's what I want us to do. If you're going to follow along with me, I'm going to spend a few minutes. It takes 3 to 8 minutes average to read a chapter of the New Testament. So on the next video, we're going to start with Matthew chapter 1. I think this one already went too long, 15 minutes. I'm going to end it. But then I'm going to come back on the second video, and it will be day 1 of 2024. And a year ago, I started this little survey. I've interviewed over 200 people this past year, and I asked them 12 questions, and I recorded all their answers. We're going to cover that down the road. But very few people have ever read the whole Bible, the people I interviewed. And another question in my little survey is, have you ever had an instance where you felt God's talking to you? And a lot of people have, and a lot of people haven't. And it kind of goes by age more than any other thing I can see. But somebody who's experienced God talking to them, they know exactly right away what I'm talking about. I think God's trying to talk to all of us all the time, every day, and we just don't know his language. So the first step is reading his word and starting to ask this question: God, what are you showing me? What are you showing me? If you start asking him that, he will start to reveal things to you that will change your life. It will literally change your life. You think you know who you are? I really doubt you do. Because God designed you. He has purpose for you. And it's not just one purpose for one day at one time. It's a continual thing. He has purpose for you every day. And you need to look into what is that purpose. So your purpose is really simple. Bring glory to God today. Bring glory to God today. Bring glory to God today. Do that every day, right? You're going to know you're pursuing the purpose he designed for you when you start to reflect his love to the people around you. It's an infectious thing. People can see it. They can pick it up. And it's like infectious. When Jesus has you and you're moving in your purpose, you're just magnetic. And I had plans to say some other stories, but we have 259 more days to pursue this, so I guess some of this will wait. I'm going to end this part, and then the next video is Matthew chapter 1. I hope you join me for this journey. I don't know where it's going to take us. Why am I calling this Nobody's Fault podcast? Nobody's Fault podcast. There's a song, and where you're finding this video on YouTube, eventually it'll probably be other places, but there's a playlist. If you look in the playlist section, there's one called Nobody's Fault. It's an old song, and the words go something like this. My mama, she taught me how to read. Or people, many musicians have done this. They always tweak it. My sister, she taught me how to read. I've got a Bible on the shelf. If I don't read it and my soul be lost, it's nobody's fault but mine. Nobody's fault but mine. Nobody's fault but mine. You know, part of my survey, I asked people, do you think America, the U.S., is on the right track or the wrong track right now? And it's very interesting. I met so many people who feel helpless right now. They feel like, I'm just one person. What can I do? I'm going to go. I have to read this little story. Early in the 1800s, there was a guy named Dr. Kirk. Dr. Kirk. I thought Kirk was a Star Wars or a Star Trek thing. But anyway, this guy, He's leading a Bible study. And a guy that's in his Bible study is named Edward Kimball in Boston. Edward Kimball became a Bible study leader later. And he worked with some really difficult young guys, teenagers in Boston. There's one he just felt like God really wanted him to talk to, and he was struggling with it. He felt like God was calling him to go talk to this kid while the kid's working at the shoe store. And he was so stressed about it, like I was today, pushing the play button, the record button, that he walked right past the shoe store. He's like, oh crap. So he goes back and he talks to this kid, probably nervous, like me, pushing the record button. And he talks to this young man, and the young man's life has changed. He meets Jesus. That was a real man. Edward Kimball was a real man. He talked to another young person about Jesus. And Jesus got a hold of this guy, and you might have heard of his name, is D.L. Moody. He was one of the great revival preachers. And then later on in Moody's ministry, a guy named John Chapman attended a Moody revival, and he became an evangelist too. And then later on, during a Chapman revival, a very famous baseball player named Billy Sunday, came forward, became a Christian. He met Jesus. And Billy Sunday's ministry, they think, reached maybe 100 million people over the years. He was in the 1920s and I think 30s in the U.S. When Billy Sunday was preaching one time, this young guy named Mordecai Ham happened to be in the audience. And he becomes a Christian. And then he's so motivated by Billy Sunday, but Mordecai Ham was, he becomes a preacher. And years later, he's preaching in a small rural town. And he's preaching in front of a kid named Billy Frank. And Billy Frank was kind of a wild kid. There's a story of Billy Frank taking all of his parents' farm animals and parading them through the house. Okay? He's kind of a wild kid. But you probably know Billy Frank as Billy Graham. His family called him Billy Frank, but his name is Billy Graham. Billy Graham probably preached, it's estimated, to over 2 billion people in his career. My dad is one of the people who listened to Billy Graham preach. He said it was a moving thing. My mom heard Billy Graham preach. They said, I didn't know this till a couple years ago. But that first man, Dr. Kirk, a Sunday school teacher, do you think he could ever guess that he would be affecting billions of people in the future? That's what a real man does. That's a real man. I hope that in the United States we can have some real men step forward, some real women, people of character, like Martin Luther King said. We'll be known by the content of our character. America, the United States, the world needs people of strong character right now. God owns a monopoly on truth. Truth builds morality and virtue and character. That's what we're going to press into in 2024. 2024. Oh yeah, here we go. So, to end my little video, Happy New Year!